Best scene in that whole movie. Not saying much, but still cool. Anyway, let me bring on my guests, starting with.
Fataco!
I am returned.
Indeed. Welcome aboard. Let's bring in our next friend and the next guest here. Let's see. Let's do this one.
Then you will die braver than most.
Hello. I have no idea what all these videos are about, but is there other people than us that are going to be watching this? Is that?
Yeah, we're live right now on YouTube.
Oh, nice.
Ula just showed up in the comments.
Oh, cool.
Hey, Axula. How you doing? And Aspiring, if you're back, then I'll have to do this one for you.
True. He has no respect. That is also true. That is true.
All right.
I guess he's still mute. Okay.
Oh shit! Sorry, I was talking. God damn it. Axula is one of the few guests that actually says shit. So yes, very nice to see you in there.
That's fine.
All right. First off, does anybody have any time constraints that make them want to either go later or go first?
I'm clear. I'm all clear.
Awesome.
Same here.
Yeah, I think I'm good.
Alrighty, then we'll just go clockwise then.
Okay.
Alrighty then.
Let's put me up first.
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, very nice choice there, Yuri. I like it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Oh, and hello to Count Valerian there in the comments. Always a pleasure.
Indeed.
So, if we recall from last time, this will be picking up in the middle of chapter 22 of The Waters of Acre, The Woman in the Catacombs. And Shenna is having her first lesson about zombies with Magistress Karna, and she's just been plopped down in front of a dead body and been told to bring it back to life. So we will continue from there. Do you at least remember how to perform the infusion? Shenna nodded and took up the crystal. She could feel the power through her gloves, steady and full, not flickering as it would when partially spent. Shenna touched her other finger to the sigil she had just painted and let the power spring forth. This magic felt vastly different from what Shenna had experienced back in Riverwatch. The volume of power in these crystals, properly sized, was far larger than the trickle of energy bound up in the small slivers of cracked quartz that Mistress Morana kept. The magic rushed through Shenna like a long, steady note from a clear, bright brass bugle. Very steady. Shenna almost felt as though she could parcel out the power in perfectly measured increments. She had never before known such incredible precision. Go on, Karna said. Use the whole charge now. Once the crystal was empty, Shenna broke the connection and looked down to take stock of her work. The very first thing she noticed was that the sigil had not evaporated with the spell. Doubtless the ink was a stronger recipe than the usual blend of water and powdered pine soot. A flicker of motion at the edge of sight drew Shenna's attention to the dead woman's face, just in time to see her eyes open wide. "She's alive!" Shenna cried out, her heart almost bursting with elation. "I did it! She's alive!" Her joy chilled somewhat when she felt Karna's hand alight upon her shoulder. Shenna looked up at the Magistress. She is alive, isn't she?" "Does it look alive to you?" Shenna looked down at the body again. The woman still lay there, completely motionless, devoid of even the steady rising and sinking of her chest to mark breathing. Her eyes stared blankly up at the featureless ceiling, her irises barely visible behind a heavy violet glaze, like a thick morning mist. Shenna suspected that if she took the woman's wrist between her fingers, she wouldn't even be able to find a pulse. "I suppose not," Shenna said. "Still, I must congratulate you," Karna said. "You have just created your first proper undead construct. The first of many to come, I'm sure." Shenna shrugged. It didn't seem like an especially impressive achievement to her, but fair enough, it was only her first lesson. "So what does she do?" "That's the wonderful thing about constructs." Karna's voice began to sparkle with enthusiasm. "They do precisely what you tell them to do." "Anything?" "Absolutely anything," Karna said. "I've set constructs to work at all manner of crucial labor about the Magisterium, manufacturing, coinage, cargo hauling, even cooking. This is the future of labor, Shenna. Any task you can describe, they will perform it without hesitation, complaint, or failure." Shenna regarded the woman, drew in a breath, and in a clear voice announced, "Sit up!" The dead woman did not move. If only it were so simple," Karna said wryly. "I've only just worked out how to implement vocal commands, and I'm still fumbling about with the finer details. Don't worry, I'll keep you to basic commands for the time being. Come with me, and I'll show you." Karna turned about and started towards one of the side doors. Shenna trooped along after her, though she slowed her pace when she noticed that Karna was heading for the doorway to the dark chamber that she had disturbed earlier. Shenna watched with muted terror as Karna unlocked the door, heaved it open, and strode into the darkness beyond. Shenna peeked through the doorway as a light from the ceiling drove the darkness back to reveal another cavernous chamber of stone, much like the last one. "Come along now," Karna said, and Shenna timidly followed after her, towards the far corner of the hall where a cloaked figure sat hunched over a table in between two towering stacks of wooden crates. The figure did not appear to be moving. "Well now," Karna purred as she reached the cloaked figure and began to inspect it. "Stalled out in mid-process. That is not supposed to happen." Shenna felt her blood turn to ice in her veins. She was caught. "No matter," Karna muttered. "Rickety old thing is long overdue for a replacement anyhow. Shenna, come over here and have a look at this." Shenna approached, her terror morphing into a shameful sort of relief, as Karna pulled the cloak down. Shenna gaped. It was another woman, or at least Shenna suspected she had once been so. The body was in such bad condition that it was honestly difficult to tell. Her skin was tanned and leathery and stretched tight across a framework of gnarled bones. Her scalp was smooth and desiccated, with only a few determined wisps of hair still clinging on. The skin on her elbows was beginning to peel away, exposing the bleach-white bone beneath. Most prominent of all, however, was the large sigil painted across her back, glowing faintly violet. The prime sigil. "This is one of the earliest constructs I designed for the Magisterium," Karna said proudly. "You see those crates? Full of new crystals ready for the spire and then the public, each one expertly tooled to precise dimensions, and all the work of this one single construct." "How old is she?" Shenna asked. "Oh, I finalized the design for this one about a decade and a half ago," Karna said. "I've kept this particular construct running for almost 6 years now, though its best days are clearly behind it." "I can see that," Shenna said, unable to remove her eyes from the dead woman. Who had she been? A wretched beggaress? A beloved great mother? A sharp-tongued harridan or a gentle peacemaker? A pillar of integrity or a tricksome fraudster? Did she have a family to mourn her? Had she been turned out by ungrateful children? Had she left behind a generous estate for her heirs? Did she have a husband waiting for her to join him in the slumber of the grave? 1,000 details of 1,000 potential lives seemed to present themselves before Shenna's mind, each one as plausible as the last, yet with no evidence to distinguish itself from any other. "Look here, now," Karna said, raising a gloved hand to the softly glowing sigil on the woman's back. She traced a finger along the woman's skin, along a line of black ink barely visible in the dim red light. As she looked closer, Shenna began to notice more black lines and other symbols painted across the woman's skin. Her body had been marked up and down like a page in a book. "What do they mean?" Shenna asked. "What do they do?" Karna corrected. "And you'll see soon enough. First, we need to clear the residual energy out." Karna handed Shenna another crystal, this one empty and still. "Well, what do I do with this one?" Shenna asked as she took the crystal. "Ah, yes, I don't suppose you've ever de-infused a construct before," Karna said. "Not to worry, it's a simple process. Just place the empty crystal against the prime sigil and hold it there until the luminescence dies out." Shenna nodded and touched the crystal against the glowing symbol. All at once the violet light winked out, replaced by a soft, sparkling pulse inside the crystal. The woman slumped forward until her head impacted on the woodwork bench before her. Shenna yelped and jumped back at the sound. Less magic in it than I suspected," Karna muttered. "No matter, it was probably overdue for a recharge anyhow." She produced another fully charged crystal from her robe. "Only a quarter charge this time, Shenna. No need to be wasteful." Shenna exchanged crystals and reached out a timid hand to the sigil on the woman's back. Once again, the magic poured through her like a stream of water from a basin and into the symbol on the dead woman. Moments in time seemed to stretch out across time as Shenna carefully monitored the amount of magic remaining in the crystal. 7/8, 5/6, 3/4, 2/3. No, wait, 3/4. Dang it! She quickly broke off the connection and jumped slightly when the woman sat back up and picked up a small hammer and a half-finished crystal that had been lying on the workbench in front of her. The chamber was once again filled with the sound of work. Tap, tap. Tap, tap. "You see the symbols now?" Karna said as the dead woman resumed her eternal labor. Shenna looked. Not only was the prime sigil glowing far brighter than before, but the other lines and symbols had begun to glow on their own with the same violet luminescence. Some of them even appeared to be pulsing softly. Waves of light crawled along the woman's arms over long channels, while symbols grew bright as her muscles contracted and then dimmed again as the muscles relaxed. The markings dictated every single movement that the woman made, like strings on a marionette in some macabre puppet show. "Magnificent, isn't it?" Karna said proudly. "Yes," Shenna didn't dare to disagree. "Very." "You'll learn what each of those sigils does in due time," Karna said, placing the cloak back over the woman's body. "For now, let us leave this one to its work." Shenna nodded and followed Karna back out of the chamber, taking one look back at the woman as the lights went out and darkness consumed her once again. Only the tapping remained. Karna closed the door and locked it as Shenna made her way back to the cargo runner. The large man was still standing behind it. He did not appear to have moved even an inch. "He's one of them too, isn't he?" Shenna said. "Of course," Karna said. "I did mention I'd set up constructs to cargo hauling, didn't I? A newer one than the others. Still, there are their own problems with these ones. Now then, let us return our attentions to this first construct of yours." Shenna spent the next few hours practicing the process of infusion and de-infusion. Karna watched closely giving out corrective advice or bland praise every now and again, seemingly at random. Shenna didn't quite understand the point of the repetition. She clearly knew how to put magic into a construct and take it out again, and she had very quickly grasped the concept of measuring out fractions of power in a crystal. So why was Karna making her go over these basics over and over again? Shenna did not dare ask why, of course. Better to keep Karna's intensity focused on the science rather than aimed at her. Naturally, a certain degree of magical energy was lost with each cycle of infusion and de-infusion. After a few hours, the crystal had dwindled to a half charge, and Karna decided to end this portion of the exercise. The lesson then shifted to the large bundle of parchments that Karna had brought along. These were her collected notes on theory and practice, a cluttered mess of diagrams and writings, often in incomplete sentences or using ad hoc grammar constructions that made Shenna's eyes boil. Material was scattered through the compendium almost at random rather than being organized by any topic. Often Karna was forced to fumble through the pages for minutes at a time to pick out a single mathematical formula or design schematic. Finally, Karna appeared to be satisfied with her lesson and declared this first day a resounding success. She passed the stack of parchments off to Shenna, telling her to transcribe all the material relating to this first day's lesson. This would not only ensure that Shenna retained all the information, but also to provide her with a reference resource for her later work. Karna then dismissed Shenna, pointing her at a nearby stairwell which would take her back up to the ground levels. The day was already fading into dusk as Shenna emerged from the storage vaults. She stopped off in the administration office to pick up some paper, as well as a small-grade crystal in case she needed to recharge her pen. Shenna then snatched a quick bite to eat in the refectory before returning to her chamber and sitting down at her desk to get to work. It took a while for Shenna to even figure out where to begin with her transcription. She had already taken it upon herself to clean up the notes into something properly digestible. Fragmented thoughts and haphazard ramblings became full sentences, just as soon as Shenna could puzzle out their intended meanings, of course. Scattered lists of numbers assembled themselves into clear tables or unwound into dignified equations. It was a tedious task, and more than once Shenna had to leave a section unfinished with a reminder to ask Karna for clarification at the next lesson. She had made a decent effort by the time night fully closed in, yet much more remained still to be done. Shenna got up from her desk to fetch the glass moon from under her pillow where she had stashed it. Athanasius was sleeping on the pillow, as had become his habit lately. Shenna gently scooped him up and moved him to lay on the mattress. Yet she stopped before setting him down again. Shenna looked over her little friend. He was a construct too, like the ones down in the catacombs. What if his recent spate of lethargy was just a sign that he was running low on energy? Maybe she could try the infusion process on him. If nothing else, it would be more practice. Shenna returned to her desk, carefully cleared away Karna's bundle of parchments and her paper copies, and set Athanasius down on the surface of the desk, beside the crystal that she had gotten from the office, originally for charging her pen. As for the sigil, but that was a quandary. When Shenna had first raised Athanasius, she had drawn the sigil on the ground and put his body on top of it. It was a starkly different design from what Karna had shown her during the day's lessons. Well, if Shenna had already done a thing one way, it was probably best to keep to how she had done it before. She fetched a new sheet of paper and raised her pen to draw the sigil. But then she did recall somewhere that inkless pens couldn't be used to draw sigils. The magical residue that formed the ink interfered with magic or something else of that nature. Well, there was a way around that too. Shenna left Ath on the desk and slipped out of her chamber to the refectory on the first floor. The evening dinner crowd was still present and fully preoccupied with their own raucous conversations. If anybody noticed Shenna skulking around one of the hearths for a stray bit of char, they certainly didn't make an issue of it. Shenna returned to her chamber, where she ground the char into a fine powder against the surface of her desk. Then, by the light of her glass moon, she mixed the black powder with a few glops of spit and blended the two substances into a simple ink. Then she drew the prime sigil atop the desk and laid Athanasius down on top of it. She picked up the crystal with her free hand, set down the glass moon, and raised her finger to begin the infusion. And there we shall have to end this week. All right. There you are. Yep, there's Balerion still nattering on about the zombie proletariat.
Well, I mean, you'd have to be a zombie to self-identify as a proletariat. That's kind of how that works.
Indeed.
Not necessarily.
I don't know. Every commie I've ever met has been a zombie. Like, it's like a script.
How many have you
sorry.
met?
How many have I met? Far too many. One is too many, if you ask me. You know, it's like there's like a, what do you call it? A catechism that they all have, like a list of things you have to do instinctively and believe, you know, fiercely, or else like somebody. Anyway, let's not get off on that. But is it my turn to start reading, or what are we doing here?
So first we just give Mr. Carl some feedback on his stuff.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
No worries.
Yeah.
Your voice is like super creepy as you read that. It really lends something to the atmosphere. It was a little hard for me to follow because like it's chapter 22.
Yeah,
kind of get what's
not
going
only
on.
is it chapter 22, it's the second half of chapter 22. So, oh boy.
Yeah, no, I jumped into the deep end here.
Mm-hmm.
But that was, it was solid work. Like your voice acting skills are up to snuff for sure.
Yep.
And it was creepy. And it was like, if I try to remember what happened, it was basically like this construct. It was like somebody learned how to use a construct, more or less. Sorry, Addo, go ahead.
Yeah, I like this story, and I like Karna as she's kind of a be it bad teacher antagonist type is my.
Yeah, I've tried to make it very clear that she is a very bad teacher. She has no sense of how to actually impart knowledge. I've also we're going to see this later on in a few later chapters, but she is also very much a political firebrand. She's very, very political about her work. I mean, we've seen like the internal squabbling that goes on with the Magisterium in other chapters, but she does not know when to shut up. Let's see.
Right. Karna is fun. Okay. Heave, hover, heaved. I think it's heaved.
Yeah, heaved.
I've heard the word
Heave,
hove before.
I've heard heaved more.
Heave, hove. I'm gonna look it up because like heave ho, right? That's what comes to mind, but it's not. Past of heave is hove.
Heaved or hove.
Yeah, I don't think it's used anymore. Probably.
Yeah, there's a lot of words that are going to fashion.
Yeah.
I mean, it reminds me of hovel. Yeah, but
It's just something you heaved into place. It's a hovel.
probably.
Any thoughts from Inspired?
Not really, because I'm still having to read his stuff. I literally have your doc open right here. I swear I'll get on it sooner or later. I just have too many things on my plate.
Wait, like mine? You're reading the back stuff that I've put in the on my that Google Doc that I put on my part of the Discord server.
Yeah, with the Warzakra Chapter 1, Shenna, have it open literally right here. I plan to read it.
Oh boy. Yeah, don't
Mhm.
worry. I got
You and Terex, eventually.
Yeah, I'm still on the first part of Terex.
And I expected someone to grace us today. Hello, Trip.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Trip.
What about karma being mean this time, Trip? This can mean
Mm-hmm.
anything with you.
Let's see. Banks. Yeah, I have banks in my story. You would be interested in what probably in one of the earlier chapters. The one with the one with the library where they were selling, where they had the little thing about currency.
Yeah, it might be neat. As is it evil? Like everything's evil. I get the impression the whole novel is about evil stuff. It's like kind of a Halloween
What is evil?
town sort of thing. It's like a
The
Jack
nature of
the Halloween thing, right? Like it's like that aesthetic is what I'm
not
picking
really.
up on. What's up?
No, it's more of I started writing it as an allegory of using zombies as either automation or the prison industrial complex.
Oh, that's clever. I like that. Yeah, automation
They're
like
not
zombies and stuff.
the
Yeah,
like the swarm of brain eating monsters. They are basically machines. And honestly, eventually the art, air quotes art, is gonna wind up something like a computer program.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that meme today of like Ted Kaczynski defending himself from that AI hot chicks that were drawn by like the AI. I don't know. I'd have to post it. I don't know how I would do that.
Yeah, well, what do you expect from an Ann Prim?
Yeah, no, I'd be
Also,
interested in
fun fact,
reading the novel.
he was
What
he
in
got
time,
brainwashed
please?
by the CIA.
Okay.
Ted
One of his
Kaczynski. Yeah.
professors in college was a CIA torture technician who broke him.
Yep. Poor guy. Like he could have done some stuff, but instead he lived in a cottage sending out bombs. He probably had a better life in prison where he got to hang out with jihadists and stuff. Like he had a good time there, apparently.
Oh, zombies
He's-
give out annoying computer errors.
Yeah.
Trip says hi to you and Carl.
Mm-hmm. Hello, Trip.
Hi, Trip.
All right.
All right.
Thank
So-
you,
I think
Trip. I appreciate it.
That's my stuff taken care of. Let's have you then, Yuri.
All right. So rather than launching onto a multi-part series, I'm going to do an epic that I wrote, like kind of an epic poem about Adam after getting kicked out of the garden. It's called Beware of God. So as you're listening to this, I want you to imagine what it must have been like to live before you were born by about 10,000 years. Also, during this exercise, imagine that the world was not ruled in those days by the Atlanteans as we now know, or will in a few years know, that it was. Imagine instead that Adam had just been kicked out of the garden into a blank and empty world that God gave him to rule. Imagine that one day, while wandering, he stops to bathe and to lament. Meanwhile, the world is absolutely pristine. The sky is so clear, you can almost see your own face hanging in it over Adam's shoulder. The hell with Gilgamesh. I am bathing in the Ganges in a time long before murder, longer still before the people heard there was a blessed patch of water, before there was a gathering of women and their lovers, before they tried to drown their sin in the stillness of the water, before it became haunted with the stink of rot and hope and humans. I am bathing in a time when the only thing that floated in the waters of the Ganges was time, time itself in starlight, and I'm naked like a newborn, and I'm shaking like old age, and my teeth are chattering words words that can't be used yet. And I'm wishing, Lord, I'm wishing that we'd never have had to have left Eden, where the trees spoke in the daylight their comfort and their love. They gave us something spiritual. You are not, your eyes not, your ears not, your nose not, your mouth. Those are just your fingers, and you are just a glove. You can see for ages past the furthest reaches of your sight. You can hear the sound of every moment from its birth, can taste them as they pass you by, can smell them in your memories. You are not your feelings, not your love, and not your hate. You can burn the world to its bones and etch forests from the ash. You can stretch tears into rivers and grow cities on their shores. From the clouds you dream, and your body is a glove filled by an ocean or leviathan from somewhere outside of time. Pull it off. Bathe in the infinity of self. Gilgamesh's garden, in the blowing wind, the trees would sing us stories of the world that lay beyond the garden. It was all an endless desert then, and we had no hourglasses then, so the trees could not explain the way that tiny grains of sand can gather and mean something, how the way the time passes can make an old man breathless, can scrape a man's skin smooth, can make a boy cry out in prayer to the sun and to the moon to stop their constant passage, to come down to earth and join us, to find a way to love us in spite of all the distance and the differences in sizes. We had so much food then that we would feed the angels in their chorus when they came to greet us with the orders of the Maker. In conversation, they helped us name the animals. They spoke of forgiveness, like some exotic beast that God forgot to make when he was busy crafting the smile of the bear and the philosophy of the bull. I remember when we slaughtered them our lamb, and the angels told us to save the blood. But justice is a snake. Justice is a snake wound around a slender branch and swallowing its tail. Hanging from the tree of life, she garbles variations of her name to scribes beneath its leaves, and they scribble down the words, then argue with the meanings. What use can there be for blood? We have juice to drink. Music is the air around the growing moon and leaves, waltzing with the wind. Music was the air under the full moon and the living sun, a ball of existence invading, a universe that braces liquid gates against it, and life shines in past the cracks and the lock, peeked through by the eyes of gods, gods who never really were, and so never ceased to be. Music was the air they breathed in their mansions on the borders of reality, and motion was their song. There was never any thought of hunger, and so we ate the fruit that can never be uneaten. We ate the fruit. We were given so much knowledge, how to sow and how to reap and how to turn blood into wine. Angels taught us everything is mine, then stood with fiery swords at what used to be my door. They taught of time and its cruel and ceaseless pace, how God took away time's heart when it was fully grown, the same way he took my rib. He put it in a greenhouse to sprout in 7 days, and it became a tree that blossomed with all the colors of the sky. He took some of its flowers and ground them into the powder that makes up our dreams. When finally he went to rest, When finally God went to rest, he could no longer be bothered. I guess this is what it's like to be without a father in a world that is stretching past the seals of all awareness, in an open, empty box of sand where I can build my castles and I can watch the sea devour them. And when I built my tower on the mountain, the world pulled it down. It crashed to its foundations. The sound left me deaf and speechless. I see an angel. An angel without wings flies, kites on the beach. He wears chains on both his shoulders, where once his conscience sat. He builds high towers from the sand so he can climb them home. They crumble at his touch. Calling on God for sympathy, his only answer is the wind. He loathes to wander deserts and dig for water with his hands, when once with a word he could make a well build itself. He raises his cracking fists to heaven when the skies won't let water fall to feed his animals and crops. They shake when the storms rock his shores. He lies on his back in untamed meadows, dreaming images into clouds, feeling sure he knew them each by name when he was still young. He says to me, I knew you when you were Buddha and your every thought was true. I knew you when you fell to your knees in tears at the zoo. The animals in their cages put you in a rage that would have torn light from the ether on the darkest, darkest day, that would have left us breathless in a sea of broken whispers. I knew you. I knew you when you were Adam, the father of mankind, and you failed us so keenly. You lost all we hoped to find. I knew you when you were me, speaking to the sand, praying for some answers, and to undo the fall. I look to the sky. Mercury's up there somewhere, and Venus is still in sight. The lion's mouth is open wide as the ram begins to charge him. The twins stand strident in the dark, arguing over what to name their stars. The crab is hiding in the shadow of the earth from the starving hunter who crosses the universe, with each step leading to infinitely more, certain that one day his journey will end. He will have the virgin who wades into the river, filling a pitcher with water as fish circle her feet. The sea goat sets foot on the shore, and the bull with his horns is the first to greet him. The centaur stands watching, weighing the situation on scales in his mind. He knows that in every confrontation there is a right side to take, just as surely as the day is in love with the night and the moon chases after the sun. Gilgamesh's river. Here I am. I'm swimming in the river, before murder, before children, with no notion yet of killing. I have yet to hear of birth or death, but by God I know the cold. There is no way to take it and cut it from the water. The way the world is blind when there is no light, and a forest is dead as any desert without the sun. And a man without a woman perceives only himself, and a wife without a husband conceives only the air. And I have lost my garden, but at least the sky at night is bright enough to breathe by, and the water I am drinking has never been polluted, and I can think so clearly. My thoughts have yet to be diluted by cities, farms, and factories and cages, by crowds of milling people whose worlds are all stages where they perform for company in any way they can. I am blessed to be alone here with my spouse in endless land, and though the trees no longer talk to me and the wind bites at my skin, at least I get to be the very first king of the world, with all of the potential that can ever be fulfilled in a time of perfect silence before the first blood has been spilled. I know my children. They will tame the wolf. They'll break the horse. They'll cut the land and scar it with their seed. They'll conquer every stream, then stride up to the ocean, ivory chalice in their hands. They will burn to ashes what won't bend. They'll put a price on all they lend. They'll halter rivers, harness winds, and burn the day at both its ends. They'll stand proud before the ocean, a golden chalice in their hands. They will kiss the moon and race the sun and far outstretch its fastest rays in the jump across the galaxy. But can they ever really set the clock? We stand beside the ocean with the chalice in our hands. I already know myself. I will continue eating, if I have to vomit first. I will continue making love, even when there is no pleasure in it. I will make a farm of every garden and find someone else to tend it. I will look to every object to make me happier than I am. What fails me, I will smash. When I am thirsty, the water will find its way to me, or I will make it. I will make my house a tower on the mountain and rule over my sight. It has been said, Zoroaster's clock is right twice a day, and never once at the same time. He told me so himself. I don't want anyone to repeat mistakes, he said, but I'm never certain what they are. Lao Tzu's board built itself to span eternity. White and black place themselves along it. They struggle to surround and swallow one another and to chase each other out. David's sling lies in his tomb, humming softly to itself. The only thing it knows for sure is if you let Goliath fight Goliath, then Goliath's sure to win. The lamb bleeds. If I were you, I'd do the same thing, Jesus said as he was hanging on the cross. What else could he do if he were you? Could he surrender to me and my natural intentions to conquer and to convert? Could he look at me with those eyes that see my soul and through it? Could he forgive the thoughts, the words, and the ever separate deeds that led us to our knees here inside this silence? In this chapel where everything is heard and nothing is understood. It is a workshop with no tools, just a drooling man longing desperately to create, to make something, to make his life have meaning or at least joy. He's knocking his fists together. He's growling. All he has is blueprints, beautiful blueprints of everything he wants and needs, everything he has to close his eyes to see, the deepest wishes, the endless dreams, the streams of lustful desires and desired lusts that swim constantly just behind his eyelids, his icons of you and your precious face he cannot read, illegibly sacred, it lays over his head. He can only watch from the cross he built himself. It's all he had, the capacity to make. And he's writing a poem from the place where one plank meets the other. It ends with him in the Savior's place. It begins with words placed in the Lamb's mouth ages since it last spoke with a voice, explaining Babylon. God and the devil sit, playing chess in the anteroom past Heaven's Gate. Michael hangs a cracked mirror he has made. He's reflected back by 7 rows of 7 facets, each showing him as he could be. David plucks his lute, reciting poetry as Raphael hunches in the corner of the room, watching every game played with this terrible disinterest. When the devil wants war, he moves for peace, and God marshals angels into fight. And when God wants peace, the devil just makes war. In the cracks of the mirror, the pieces dance on crystal strings. The psalms ring out in their works as they are flung about to where the universe demands they should be, to fill each horrid vacuum that queens and rooks leave behind when they sacrifice themselves to dark or light. And somehow in their squares, they find the time to stretch towers towards heaven. Okay. I hope that wasn't too out of place.
No, it's interesting. Very interesting. Very evocative.
Yes.
What exactly is it supposed to be exactly? So it's you described it as an epic. So
It's like
what is it?
just Adam trying to deal with the fact that he's been kicked out of paradise. And like come to terms with that. That was more or less the conceit behind it. But yeah, it didn't really it wasn't exactly like, I don't know. It might have given you guys imagery, it might not have, or a sense of place or not. It's hard to say. But carry on. Thoughts?
Ennui. That's a good word to describe it.
Ennui.
Ennui. He's looking for purpose, I suppose.
I liked how it was written. I was just lost because I know like fuck all about what you were writing about.
Right, like the Judeo-Christian imagery is lost on you. It's funny though. I noticed it's like, oh, Zoroaster's in there. Like I dropped the line to Zoroaster.
Mm.
Well,
Well, I honestly love the joke about Zoroastrianism that sometimes people who don't know about it will say, or people who are just hearing about it say, "Oh, you think these are the worshippers of Zoro? You are wrong."
What's the joke? Sorry, you mumbled it a bit.
So the joke is when you ask who are the Zoroastrianism, what is Zoroastrianism? You probably, I know what you think. These are the worshippers of Zoro. You are wrong.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I like all of the imagery. There was a lot of dense material that I was like, okay, this is interesting. Felt very stream of consciousness. There was a lot of 2001: A Space Odyssey, specifically the bit with the monkeys.
really? I mentioned monkeys in there?
No, I mean like the fact that it's 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Oh, like the part where it's like they'll race the sun and far outstrip his fastest rays and they jump across the galaxy. That one?
Yeah, kinda.
Like the chalice, we go up to the chalice, the ocean of the chalice. Oh, yeah, I wasn't too strict on it. It was more of a it was, yeah, no, fair point,
It's a
Axula.
follow-up.
Like why would Adam reference future events?
Oh, he did. There's a lot of future events that Adam likely saw most of the things of the day, just like all the other prophets did.
Yeah, well, there's that. Like I know my children, like I already know myself. Like they're gonna do all this, and jump across the galaxy. Yeah, but that more or less. I mean, I wasn't being too strict on myself when I wrote it. I wrote this like 12 years ago, a bit more. But it was like the most complete thing I had on hand.
Okay.
No,
Whereas,
it does sort of remind me of the towards the end of Paradise Lost, after Adam and Eve have already eaten the apple, and Adam witnesses everything that's going to happen to mankind, up to and including all that stuff. It kind of seems like it's sort of a guy who, thought he was sort of living his life on his own terms, only to realize that there actually is a plan, and he's now seeing the plan, and he really doesn't like it. And he feels cheated of his own significance.
That's a pretty good. Yeah, I suppose that's a fair summation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, growing up sucks like that, doesn't it?
Yeah, I guess so. It's like, you're not really in control. Yeah.
Then when you have to leave the nest and figure out your life, you don't know what's going on, and you can never really figure it out.
This is what it's like to be without a father in a world that is stretching past the seals of all awareness. I was pretty proud of some of like I was reading through it because like as I'm going, I started to feel kind of shy, like there's like no there's no audience to look at, and it's like am I just like what's the word? Indulging myself at others' expense is what always comes up in my head. But it's like there's some stuff in there I found. I'm rather proud of the way that the words come together. But yeah, it's not as I guess next time I do this, I'll probably do like a story kind of thing as opposed to that. I just felt like I had something that was like self-contained.
Yeah, just keep in mind that you have a 20-minute limit.
Oh, how long did that go?
You went around 20 minutes, so you're thinking that you're fine.
All right, that's what I figured. Yeah, no, that was another reason because I thought it was about 20 minutes. When I used to perform these at open mics, so it's like 20 minutes now. Anyway, I guess the aspiring writer.
Mm-hmm. To recall what happened the last chapter, because even I forgot what the last chapter I read was. Vampiras with the Akina squad. They reported what the events that happened in the past third of the book to Preeminent, who I've been name dropping here and there. Very prominent figure in the dissenters. You will all probably be lost. What's happening in this chapter is Preeminent is talking with the other leaders of the dissenters. Yes, thank you, Count. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. Thankfully, there doesn't need to be, I don't think there's any information I need to tell you besides that for you to understand what's going on. Normally, I have, I think, all the information in the chapter. With that, I shall begin. Ordinran rubbed at his temples. His headache never seemed to go away now, as he looked at his reflection in the window overlooking the landing yard. While the squad units of the dissenters had no uniform besides their armbands, he always wore something reminiscent of what the dissenters' armed forces wore. A drab coat and trousers, black to contrast off his pure white skin. He had formal uniforms that were decorated with silver along the shoulders and chest, but those were for when he needed to make an appearance. In private, he preferred the simple and unadorned uniform. Fingering the purple armband near his shoulder, the only other color he wore, Ordinran let out a plaintive sigh. For 2 centuries he'd been with the dissenters, and for most of that time he'd worn the purple, had used the name Preeminent. The face of the dissenters was his face, their name his name. Not for much longer. Adjusting his cuffs and collar, he walked to his desk, a large holocom built into the center. A Baroque feature, when a holocom the size of a puck would do the job, but that had come from one of its predecessors, and its size did have its uses. The glassy surface was still dark. Ordinran pursed his lips, running his teeth across them. Getting the council together was always difficult, especially on short notice, but he made clear this meeting was of utmost importance. Clearly, after several standard hours of waiting, none had believed him. Letting out an exasperated breath, he sat down, hand on his chin. Too much was happening too fast. That triple host girl had already been a surprise, but he'd taken it in stride. He had counted himself lucky to have found her so close to the assassination, despite the problems that accompanied the girl. But if Samantha Charles was any indication, as the day of reckoning looms ever closer, his followers were looking desperately for a way out of the operation. They called it a suicide mission, and they didn't even know how right they were. They, the council, then considered this a legitimate attempt, trying to conserve as many resources as they could and giving them only what they were willing to spare, which was barely anything. The attack force as it stood was pitiful, far too few what we would need an army to accomplish. He knew it, the squads knew it, and the council knew it. We need to garner more attention. Recruitment has been dropping, the dissenters becoming stagnant, and the people seeing us as irrelevant. We need to do something to bring us back into the public eye, to remind them we're still here and fighting. What better than an assassination on our sworn enemies? And who better to lead it than the perceived leader of the dissenters? That's how they explained it, their reasoning for forcing this on him. It wasn't untrue, their explanation, but that wasn't the reason for this. The point of the mission was to see him dead, or failing that, discredit him enough to demote him without causing an uproar. Failing a mission this large would be enough an excuse, regardless of circumstance. Resisting the urge to slam his fist into the desk, Gordon Rand shook his head, his lip curling in disdain. He'd remained on the council as other members retired or died, and never had there been a council that feared him as this current one did. Most of the other members saw his influence among the dissenters, an influence that rivaled their own put together, as a threat, fearing that if they ever came to a disagreement, he'd go against them regardless of the decision reached. As if I'd do so after 2 centuries on the council! He got up from the chair again, and not for the first time crossed the room to stare outside. Cowards! All of these new council members are all damnable cowards, and that's why they want me out. Clenching his teeth, Gordon Rand forced himself to keep his composure, even while alone in his office. If they could only... The thought trailed away. The holocron was blinking slowly with a blue light. Rushing over, he saw that at least one of the council members had arrived, finally. Opening a channel, a hologram showed Trottle, the head admiral of the Dissenters' Navy, his council name chosen from a kind of fish that never stopped growing. His hologram was heavily blurred, making his entire form unrecognizable in case of eavesdropping, but ordered Ramp had known to cost Belendrin long before he'd been promoted to a council member. He'd be giving Preeminent, whose hologram wouldn't be blurred, a wide grin, showing off his particularly pointed teeth to make him appear anything but congenial. Preeminent! I hear you called us all here, and yet I seem the only one to arrive. He chuckled harshly. Nice to see I won't be the one yelled at for being late this time. Ordenrand gave him a small smile. Having to constantly travel from system to system, Acost had the most reason for being late among all the other members, and the other council members rarely give him slack for it. You're the first to arrive this time, Trottle. Enjoy the feeling while it lasts. Acost let out a loud huff. How are things in the outer territories? Evoluto and Ascending Territory have been bashing their heads together even more than normal. The Supreme Commander definitely seems itching for it. That wasn't surprising, considering the whisper they'd heard of the Supreme Commander thinking he'd found a genetics center and wanting to take the Angels of the Executor in his attack. Before he could inquire anything further, another hologram popped up next to Acost's blurry form. It was Orphan, the head of the Dissenters' Armed Forces, whose name matched their council name, being a Boron. Their hologram was also the only one not blurred besides his. There's no need to hide it if you were a Boron. While the hologram only showed their top half, he knew Orphan would be sitting cross-legged or squatting. Borons had a weird disinclination toward chairs, and not just because most weren't made for their size. She also wore barely anything besides her armband, just a sleeveless top that covered her upper chest. Borons also had a weird disinclination towards covering themselves too much, saying it was too restrictive to them, and were given exceptions for the most part. A Trottle. Preeminent, Orphan greeted curtly. Thank you for joining, Orphan, Ordenrand replied with a nod. May I ask why the delay? I thought it prudent to wait until a Trottle arrived before joining into any discussions. Preeminent raised an eyebrow. That was Orphan's subtle way of asking if there was anything they should know before the others joined. The three of them formed a sort of alliance, being the only 3 military leaders of the council, and it probably helped cement the other four's view of him. Still, they tried to support him when and where they could, and he couldn't ask for more. Before he could say anything, another hologram appeared, and Ordran couldn't help but narrow his eyes on who joined. The accountant, her hologram just as blurry as a Koss, but Ordran could see her. A human with short black hair and thin eyes always looked at everything with a judgmental indifference. Asanakaze was the most avid about removing him while being the least vocal or direct about it. Apologies for the tardiness, Preeminent. I was caught up in my duties. Was I interrupting anything? Ordran forced a smile. No, you weren't. As you well know. She had come in to make sure nothing was discussed beforehand, and now that she arrived, the others would show soon. As he predicted, the other two council members joined minutes later. Orsan, otherwise known as Vanisher and head of research, and Outlier, who Preeminent solely knew was Zahan Asrim of the Solstra, along with a few others who had been part of the mission giving him aid, none of whom were on the council. Zahan's identity was the most important to keep secret among them. The Solstra did not wish to risk going against the Ascending Territory, but the Centers needed a source in the Outer Territories, and Zahan had been willing after what Preeminent did for him. But he'd made clear if for any reason there seemed a risk that his assistance would incite a war between the Solstra and Ascending Territory, he would bow out. Well, Preeminent, you've called us all here. What did you find so important that it must be brought to us immediately? The accountant began. Preeminent glanced at the empty space where extortionists would be. The last council member responsible for reconnaissance and intel, they were the only ones beside a Koss that worked in the field, despite it not being required and actually discouraged for their position. And he and the council never managed to rein them in. Their identity being unknown and only vouched for by their late predecessor certainly didn't help matters. The extortionist was adamant on keeping his identity confidential, even from Dim, since they worked in the field, and they refused to leave the field even after much debate. That, combined with constant tardiness, unavoidable as it was in their self-imposed position, made the rest of the council unofficially agree that their attendance wasn't necessary to begin a council meeting. Still, Ordran had hoped extortionists would make an appearance. Perhaps they would later, but he had hoped to ask what had transpired on Cran Minor. Ordran explained what had been reported on the retrieval mission on Verdun, none interrupted for even a question. Once finished, he then proclaimed his intentions, and the entire council erupted in a cacophony of unintelligible protests. After they realized nobody could understand anyone else, they quieted down, and the accountant took the lead. You propose to take the leader of the Angels of the Executor to one of our military bases and parley with her? You had a different location in mind? Yes, strand her out on a planet or in vacuum. It's inconvenient to parley with her in either location. You are not going to parley with her. That's a decision the council has to confirm on, and we have not. That is why we're here, aren't we? I have called you all here because this is an opportunity we cannot afford to waste. Preeminent, you cannot seriously be considering this, Vanisher protested. If she has surrendered, if Vampa herself has defected from the sources and Ascending Territory, then meeting with her is vital. We cannot allow such a valuable potential asset slip through our grasp. Orphan shook her head, her short red hair following the motion. I have to agree with Vanisher and Accountant. What you propose, to bring her to our Avalon base, could have disastrous consequences. We don't know how many souls she holds, and with enough, she could wipe out the entire base and gain intel we cannot afford to have in our hands. There is no better place to keep her in check than a military base, he protested. And you forget to attack the base, she'll have to get through me first. Another reason we cannot allow this, the accountant retorted. You are needed for the coming operation. We cannot risk you in a pointless endeavor. It could be a trap, Preeminent. You seem to forget that, Vanisher cut in. She, by all accounts, saved the host girl we yourselves tried to rescue. What better way to get in our good graces, the accountant argued. Save the girl, get brought over to one of our bases, the only place we could hope to contain her, as you said, and have her unleash another round of carnage that would likely start with that very girl. This is a pretty big risk you're asking us to take with not much to go on, Preeminent, the Cost admitted, sounding reluctant. Even if what you told us is true, it isn't enough to eliminate the possibility of this being a hoax. I mean, this is one of the angels. 6 centuries of loyalty, and we're supposed to believe she turns only now? The others gave sounds of agreement, Orphan nodding, and Ordenran fought to keep his expression neutral. He knew their caution, understood their caution, but he did have reason to believe Vampire had turned, and he did not believe it was the first time she had. The reports at a time when the sources beat down dissenters in the 3rd century were few and unclear. They had salvaged enough to know what information they had spread, but there was precious little else. But he read through all those reports and he noticed something. There was a reference to an unexpected ally, one they never believed would join them, and the dissenters of the time, and there was a report that mentioned the status of every angel at the time, with the exception of one, Vampra. He had never shared his suspicions about the lack of reference. There was hardly convincing evidence with so much information lost, but with hearing Vampra's recent surrender, he had to consider, could it be Vampra who betrayed the sources then and turned away from them now? But none of his suspicions would matter if he couldn't convince them to approve of him meeting with her. As he thought of how to argue his case, another hologram popped up, and everyone went silent as they focused on Extortionist. Extortionist, Ordenran greeted with a hidden smile. How nice of you to join us. We would actually value your input on... Cut to the chase, I've not much time, or Extortionist interrupted, using a filtered voice that sounded like a middle-aged male. Had the rush to get here, and here is hardly secure. Mood souring, Ordenran allowed the accountant to catch Extortionist up to speed, after which Preeminent asked about his involvement on Fordan. I thought to keep an eye on things when suddenly an explosion happened right where Mark's vessel had said to have landed. A little peeking, and I saw who I presume was Mark, butt naked and missing part of his left arm, and it wasn't regrowing. By that point, the Fordan authorities were coming to investigate, so I made haste before I was spotted. Then I got wind that all authorities on Cran Minor were to search for a small girl fitting the description of our Nala. After which you commanded Shadow Squad, Ordenran said. I didn't do anything but tell them what happened. Good thing, too, or they may have still thought to rescue the McKee girl from Merck's brig and ended up there themselves. After they split up to begin their search of the city, I made my rounds until I met with Torin, who was sweating enough to help a McKee in a desert. Barely needed convincing to tell me who had been there and where he'd sent them. So you were the one to order Shadow Squad to the Applin district, the accountant asked. Yep. Told them who they'd find with the girl and to be prepared, and they were able to catch up not far behind from what I gather. Then, of course, next thing I hear is the plasma firing corpses found in the Applin district, and later the shield firing on a cloaked ship. And then you later send word for me to be ready for Commander Chelsea's report saying it would be interesting. Well, it was, wasn't it? A chuckle came through, earning them a scowl. So what do you make of Preeminent's proposal, Extortionist? Vanisher asked. Do you believe Vampa really turned coat? His voice made it clear he doubted it. Yes. Ordenran's eyes widened and everyone was silent for a moment. Explain, the accountant said recently. For the retrieval of Nala, I had to get one of our contacts to change a few orders to get her sent to the Alandia outpost while Mark was sent to Yamar. But what I gathered after is that Vampa wasn't receiving orders. And when her ship landed on Shea Prime, without her, there was an attempt to locate her, which means she stowed away on Mark's ship, and there's no way this could have been priorly planned. Even if this is not a hoax, that does not mean her loyalties now lay with us, the accountant pointed out. All we know is that she's not acting on orders. We'll never know where her loyalties are if I don't speak with her. Why does it have to be you? You're needed, Finisher began. I'm needed for an operation you've all set up to fail. Don't try and deny it. You may keep up your pretense with all those who follow us, but we all know what it is. Ordenran stared down each one of them in turn. The least you can do is let me try and use what I have, because none of you want to work with her even if she has defected. Am I correct? Nobody answered, but he got the impression they were having a hard time looking at him. I again submit my proposal to meet with her. If you think there's a risk to me, I will remind you that I have fought the angels before. All of the angels. And survived. I can handle one, even Vampra. There is one other thing I think that should be made aware before we decide, Extortionist interrupted. As it stands, Vampra's potential betrayal has not been released. Acosta scoffed. Of course not. Why would they publicize that? They'd be doing our job for us. Yes, but even during Cran Minor search, her description was not included with the girls. As it stands, the sources haven't acknowledged her betrayal in any degree besides the initial attempt on Shay Prime. No notifying, no search, nothing. Trying to play it off, Acosta suggested? Or not create confusion when they admit her back into their ranks, Vanisher considered, musing to himself. Despite this, I think there's enough to approve Preeminent's proposal, but it's something I think we should all know. Whatever is happening, I haven't the faintest clue as to what it is, and it's more muddled. We get it! Preeminent cut it off. Why did you have to add that? It was something to ask Vampire, at least. Her reaction would be telling. But why not include a description, if not her identity? They'd wanted to recapture the double host. They'd locked down an entire planet to that end. But why not Vampira? Shall we vote then? Acosta and Orphan both immediately voted for him. Outlier, who had remained silent, voted against. Extortionist voted for him, as he said he would. Vanisher against. That left Accountant with the deciding vote. If tied, his proposal would be accepted but contested, which would limit what he could do. I accept Preeminent's proposal. Ordenran's dot stopped. So we're in agreement? He asked, unsuccessfully trying to keep the shock out of his voice. Accountant and he rarely agreed on matters easily. We are. Proceed with caution, but I trust you've already begun preparations before we arrived. We will schedule a meeting to hear of your results. Is there any other business to attend to regarding this or anything else of note? The conversation turned to talking of the coming operation and the preeminence necessary, but Ordenran barely listened, nodding dully. He was thinking of what to do after the meeting concluded. He'd managed to convince them, with extortionist helps, but how was he going to get a sworn enemy, even a former sworn enemy, to join what she'd stood against for centuries? Chapter end. Thoughts, concerns, critiques, comments.
So just for reference, Vampira, I don't know. Does Vampira actually appear in this chapter, or is this just some other people talking about her?
Other people talking about her. She does not show up.
Okay. So it's like the bad guys trying to plot what they're gonna do.
Kinda.
Very good. Very good.
Oh, go ahead, please.
I did notice I think there was a big stretch where there was sort of a description of a debate, right? There's plenty of dialogue throughout the scene, but there is a certain stretch right in the middle where there isn't a lot of dialogue, and it's just a description of people talking, but what they're saying, rather than actually them saying it.
Yes, because it's information the reader already knows. It's basically recapping events.
Ah, yes. Let me see what that is. Look at that.
Anything else? I am looking through the comments to see what the chat said.
I did say that, yeah. Commandeered.
Yeah, I might have mispronounced it, but I did put commandeered, not commandered.
All right, good.
Is it a vampire thing or just her name? Her name is just Vamp. I swear I didn't think vampire when I gave her the name.
You weren't even thinking about vampires at all.
No, legit. No, it's literally based off of something.
Mm.
Maybe someone else who gave that name did, but I just was like, oh, this is a cool name.
Yeah, like, you mean like what was that lady, like, used to do the late night scary movies thing? Was it
Elvira?
Elvira, yeah. Is that what it's based on? Elvira?
No, I'm not going to say where it's based off from out of embarrassment.
Oh, fair enough. I'm sorry. I mean, I remember you describing the one creature as not sitting on a chair because of its size. I thought that was a pretty good way of like having a reason to build like world, like build information about this species. I can't remember what the species was called. Like I got thrown in. It's like I just feel like Donnie from The Big Lebowski, like the whole time.
Yeah, you're coming right in the middle, so
Yeah.
rip. Borons, they're basically imagine a person stretched to 15 feet tall.
All right, so like paper thin.
Not paper thin, like just like like imagine you're in Photoshop and you just take a person and then stretch the height until they're like 3 times taller.
Oh, yeah.
Kinda like
They're not
that.
really thicker. They're not really thicker. It's
Not really, no.
no. There's a race of Martians in C.S. Lewis's space trilogy. It's like that. It's like one of the races is like super tall and thin.
Yeah. Also,
Reminds me of
a novel where everything is based off of Trip. Jesus, what a world!
that.
Professor.
That's pretty good. Yeah. Is Trip still here?
It
Probably.
is, yeah.
Yeah.
Done. Your comment, yeah, at rather than on would be better. Where are you referring to?
Narrowed their eyes on.
Narrowed.
So, narrowed his eyes on who joined. It's kind of an odd way of putting it. So like narrowed his eyes at Blair and also output on seeing, which I also think is a good one. But
Can
those
we
are
do
my
that?
main thoughts. Everything else is fine.
Continuing down.
It was kind of interesting. It was kind of interesting that Valerian did the number, the 10, didn't realize what the number of 104 meant in the title of the video. Maybe that's just me, but I kind of like, I don't even know why the hashtag sign means has gotten to mean number sign. I don't even know where that came up from.
Oh, Trip. You're special. Just being a crazy lady does not cross that out. If anything, I'd say it makes that the case.
It's a hashtag. Yeah, I know, but it's just like but it's kind of like, I know it's meant to be a number. Yeah, I know, that's why it's every time we have a number on YouTube or anywhere else, you just put it. You put the number of thread. It's just hashed. It's just that hashtag is kind of commandeered to the sign in certain venues, specifically Twitter.
Well, Count, explain what's this? You put Boron question mark, then Sorens, and then Cerrone. Please explain. I don't know what any of that means. Maybe you were trying to tell Yuri the species, but then I don't know what the other two means.
Internet is dumb.
Yeah. Oh wait. Okay, so some of the grammar mistakes I make are partially me reading them and making them and not writing them. I will say that. I do grammar checks. A lot of them.
Nope. Hang on. That was mine.
I
Also,
did
I-
mention Sorens.
Sorens.
That's what they're called. Well caught, Count Valerian.
What's Sorens?
Oh,
Yeah,
it's from Space Trilogy.
Yeah,
No idea what that is.
Everybody should read it.
C.S. Lewis. He wrote a space fantasy, space sci-fi series. It's the Narnia guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, C.S. Lewis was a lot more than the Narnia guy. Right? But,
Well, I know he's also he's very much the like he's well, I know he's more than just the Narnia guys.
I know.
He's also written stuff like Screwtape Letters, Problem with Pain. That's
One of the great theologians. Well, I mean, pop theology, I guess. He was best friends with Tolkien, if that's any help. It's actually the main character of the Space Trilogy is based on Tolkien.
Yeah. It's actually really interesting that they, Here They Be Dragons used J.R.R. Tolkien and C.S. Lewis as actual characters in the book, and actually used rather interesting uses for the characters. I only read the first book, but it's interesting, but I didn't really want to read the other books in the series that much.
Is it more like children's fantasy or somewhere like tween or adult?
Basically, it's kind of a mashup of a bunch of different things. It's kind of like, kind of think of it like there's the archipelago of the imagination. It's very, very much. I think it's, I guess, like college age stuff where these three guys go off into a fantasy world and have to and meet a bunch of people from literature. So
it's a little bit like The Magicians, but maybe better actually than that. What it sounded like, or at least more.
Well, these are real fictional characters. Like you have Captain Nemo, Mordred from King Arthur. You've got a whole bunch of different.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. I might give that a look.
Yeah, it's just neat to have Tolkien and Lewis as characters in the book. You don't know it until the end, though, when they sign their names in the book.
Oh, they're under pseudonyms?
No, they just use their first names, and they use the actual reference of Jack, since C.S. Lewis never liked being called Clive.
Yeah, I can see why. Clive. It's the most British name. It's like if he was gonna go by Clive, he'd have to have a monocle, wear a top hat all the time. It'd be a whole ordeal.
I don't know. There is also the matter of Reginald.
Yeah,
And
it's a solid accent.
Well, apparently someone has changed my name on the Discord server to someone who can do accents done.
Well, at least I can do a pretty good impression of Pinocchio.
Please no.
Shut up, Morty. Shut your mouth. We're in public. Morty, shut it.
Now, what in the bloody hell was that supposed to be?
I'm
Are
not
you trying to do some sort of Irish accent?
No, I'm just...
Like a fucking Egypt is what you sound like.
Indeed, that's kind of another point. Oh.
Well, now you just sound like Mickey Mouse from the South Park. All right. Do your thing, Don.
Alrighty.
Before that, so did you all think the dialogue was good between them?
Yeah, the dialogue worked.
Okay. Did they all seem to have?
Right, it's good, but that's the thing with the dialogue. You can always use more of it.
Yeah. And this time, because of something fucking Whiskey said, I tried to give them all somewhat of a distinct voice. Did that come off at all?
I would say so. Like, I feel like I can get the accountant's voice pretty well.
Yeah, I got a sense.
Okay. It all made sense with their positions?
More or less.
I had no idea what was going on, but I could
The
definitely
first name was Bothersome.
two different people talking.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, yeah,
So,
it was good.
Nice. So I'm considering just reading the final So I'm on the final chapter of Night of the Abyss, and I'm considering whether or not to do this one or finish or start on something new. Since a lot of people have kind of been missing we'll probably miss out on a lot of the context. Well, I can just finish it. It's only a couple of pages, really.
I mean, you could do like a little bit of context, so I'll have some thread to follow.
Yeah, just
Okay.
do a previously on the showcase.
Yeah.
So, in terms of what has happened, basically, the book is about a guy who is essentially a demigod. He's a divine spirit that has been clothed in human form and is part of a species of other and semi-divine creatures as well. And he was brought back to the world of the living. No, I write 5 books at the same time. I'm dear. And he is now trying to work with a group of people who have lost their own loved ones and the political system and that are now being impersonated by these divine creatures that have now been placed in their bodies. And Mordred's the only one of them that is good, or at least is on the side of the people who are fighting against the Elder Ones. So the Elder Ones.
So you're saying all of these spirit beings went into bodies of different people. Mordred is possessed by someone who's good. Am I getting that right, or did I miss it?
Mordred is actually a divine. Basically, what's happened so far is a long time ago he was an Elder One on the losing side of a war and got banished to hell. And at the beginning of the story, he claws his way out of hell and manages to possess the body of a human, and that allows him to interact with the physical world again, or at least stay on the plane that would be, or kind of the plane where humans and that sort of thing reside, as opposed to hell. So,
all right, I guess roll the clip. I'll do what I can.
All right, and as part of his, one thing that he's been trying to do is he's been trying to support the humans who are against who basically, it started off with a cult rebellion, and now it's kind of spiraled into a shadow war. And a lot of the humans don't know that the Elder Ones are around, and even most of the knowledge about them has been lost. And so Mordred is doing what he can to try and help a side that he's the only one that can do anything for them. And in terms of what has just happened, they have just barely rescued the high priestess of the main religion after she was kidnapped by a giant. And now they're going back to their base right ahead of an evil Elder One-led army that just barely got done finishing cleaning up the giants. And there's kind of been some interesting discussions about theology and the nature of God at least so far, because Mordred has never believes that there is a goddess. He's just never seen her, and there's also stuff about how he's basically the progenitor of the state religion, mostly because he started something to honor his mentor who died a long time ago. So, but that's pretty much the summary up to this point of a 280-page book. Yeah, one of the priestesses doesn't like him. The other one does like him, okay. And he's having, one of the things about it is Mordred is having to interact with the wife of the man he possessed, not intentionally possessed, because her husband was going to be the body for somebody else, another bad Elder One, but Mordred took the other Elder One's place after he killed him. So, yeah. Heterodox angel. I'm not sure I understand. Please clarify.
Is he what?
Heterodox? I'm not.
I'm pretty sure you meant heterosex angel being things. You hate everything except your plants.
There is an actual. Actually, that is an actual word. Heterodox is an actual word. I just looked it up.
What does it mean?
Not conforming with accepted or orthodox standards or beliefs.
Isn't that orthodox? Well, anyways.
Heterodox.
It means basically being a nonconformist.
I don't know why. Orthodox and heterodox seem similar.
No, orthodox and heterodox are opposites.
Are they? Oh no, it's unorthodox. My brain went stupid.
Yeah, unorthodox is like you're straying from the thing, but it's not like so much necessarily intentional.
And heterodox would be explicitly diverging from the thing for the sake of the divergence.
Yeah.
Okay.
Air high five.
Listing that down in my list.
Yeah. It's an interesting word. So this is the final chapter. It'll be pretty short. It's only like 2 pages. Chapter 28. Stormcloud's Gathering. Mordred and Kara rode through Blacklight's gate into the city right as the rain began falling on them. Good thing we got here before the rain came down on us, Laviarna said with a grimace, pulling her hood up to stop the downpour from soaking her hair. The storm is a bad sign. Mordred looked up at the sky. It means Lancelot and Cesarius are combining their strengths to create a tempest. These are just the initial few gusts. It can get worse? Laviarna paused, then grimaced as the downpour rapidly escalated. Evidently so. Kara threw her hood back as she looked up at the sky, eyes closed and a smile on her face. This is a light breeze compared to what we get on the islands. No wonder you're backwards. Laviarna drew her cloak around herself. Your brains are too waterlogged to think properly. Before Mordred or Maeve could tell them to stop bickering, Varys and Kate rolled up to them, cloaks flapping in the wind. What is going on? Kate asked, pointing at the storm. A group of Elder One. And this. Group of Elder Ones is coming for the city, Mordred explained. We need to evacuate as soon as possible. Wait, what? Bacchus rushed up to them in a small carriage. Punch jiggling slightly. We've been preparing for battle with the enemy. No. There's no way of fighting as many Elder Ones. Okay. There's no way of fighting that many Elder Ones. We need to run, and we need to run now. Fine, Ferris Grimace. Can you make us some wagons? Yes, but I'm not coming with you. Mordred dismounted Breeze and patted the horse on the neck. I'm staying here to draw the enemy away. Once they're away from you, I'll circle back around. You're going to be a distraction? Maeve exclaimed, right as the flash of lightning hit the sky. Yes, Mordred waved to Varys. Let's get an assessment of what we're going to need, and then we leave as fast as we can. It took several hours of Mordred working nearly non-stop, but finally they were able to create a large baggage train with everyone in the city packing up everything they had into their individual wagons. Rain sprayed off the many carriage houses that had been quickly assembled to carry the people, several of the baggage wagons covered in thick tarps that would keep the rain clear. Tired but satisfied, Mordred had sat against a wall, letting the wagons pass by him toward the gates. So, you're not going with us? Maeve came up to him and put her hand on his shoulder. If I come with you, they'll chase you down. Mordred took a deep breath. I can't let any harm come to you. Thank you, Maeve smiled and gave him a hug. Just come back and see if we can figure things out between us. I'd like that. Mordred gave her a light kiss on the cheek, like you'd seen other couples do, then stood up and ushered her toward the carriage house. Go, please. All right. Maeve gave him another hug, then entered the carriage. Sighing, Mordred watched as the column quickly departed toward the forest where they would hide, or at least make their way to another, less dangerous area. Soon enough, they were gone, and Mordred stood alone in the town square, not sure who he was going to miss out of that group. Pulling power back to himself, Mordred set about making the city into a death trap that nobody but him could get out of. Suits of armor with basic archery commands lined the walls. Spikes and other booby traps were in every house and behind every door. Lancela smiled as she examined the gates of Lake Blackhear, or Black Lake as the humans called it. Soldiers lined the walls as if the entire garrison had come to defend the city against her wrath. Siege weapons were likely behind the wall, as well as more troops. Begin the attack, she smirked as lightning crashed across the sky. Let the city be burned. Mordred summoned his blade and drove it into the ground, closing his fist around the hilt. Great and powerful mother, he whispered, letting his eyes drift close. Often I have prayed unto thee for guidance, strength, and peace with my choices. I have always done everything I could to walk according to your will as Guinevere taught me. This time I pray only that my life is required. That if my life is required to save these people, then I will pay that price. If you will send them a protector who can defend them against those who would harm them, please send someone to them that can do that. He was about to stand when he felt something prodding him to ask for something more. For a moment he focused on that prodding, trying to figure out what more the Great Mother wished him to ask for. Then it clicked. Swallowing, he firmed his grip on his sword. Is it time? He thought eagerly. If it be thy will, he said, voice slow with how hard it was to fully believe that his dearest wish might be granted. I ask only that I might be able to see thy face one time before I am sent to the Amaran Plain, and when I die. I have always desired to see thee in thy glory. I have waited for thy timing for many years. If this is my final battle, I would ask that I might look upon thy glory just this one time. Not that I might know that thou art the divine creator, but that I might honor thee as thou art, and not as that I imagine that thou art. My son. Mordred opened his eyes to see that before him was an elder one. She seemed to glow with a light that made the sun dim, though the illumination did not extend beyond the two. two of them. She had a heart-shaped face, brown hair, and a few freckles dotted her face. Smiling, she stroked his face gently. I am so proud of you. Many times you have asked to see me, and you have never given up. Because of your faith, I cannot hide myself from you any longer. Greatest one, Mordred whispered, awed by what he was seeing, though despite his tattered armor and deformed shape, he felt no shame in this being's presence. Thank you for honoring my plea. You have honored me with your actions. With a loving smile, she bent down and pulled him to his feet. Impulsively, Mordred flung his arms around her. Without pausing, she embraced him back, and he realized she was crying. My son, she held him close, you've been through so much pain, so much heartache, and yet you have not complained against me. And all I can do is warn you that more will come, worse than what you have already been through. At least I have seen you. Mordred pulled away, only to hold her by the shoulders and gaze upon the face of his creator. If I am to suffer in the Amaran Plain, then I shall do so having seen your glory and goodness. You will never enter the Amaran Plain again, Mordred, she said quietly. When you die, you will be welcomed into my kingdom. What? Mordred frowned. Why, I will reveal more to you at a later time. She put her hand onto the side of his face and kissed the opposite cheek. Fight bravely, my noble and worthy son, and know that I am with you. Without fanfare or blaze of glory, she vanished, but the world seemed brighter to his eyes. Thank you, Mordred whispered, dropping to his knees and weeping, tears and rain mingling on his face. I love you, I love you, I love you. Feeling a sense of peace and warmth blossom inside his chest, Mordred stood up, and as the first barrage of fireballs hit the walls. Come, he declared, thunder pealing in time with his words. Come to face me, for I fight in the name of the living goddess. I do not fear you, for I have seen her face and felt her hand. I know she is at my side. The end of the first book of the Inquisition.
Got a little moment there, like Zuko and Iroh rejoining in the tent.
Mm-hmm.
I was sad because I thought you had lost your way.
Zuko's is the best thing in Avatar.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice,
Also,
nice that he gets to go back to
yeah,
heaven.
lady, don't let him know that there's gonna be worse stuff coming. Seriously.
You're saying,
Oh,
Yuri?
Oh, it's nice that he got back into heaven like that, right? Like that's what she was saying, or no? Did I misunderstand that?
Well, basically that eventually eventually. He's still gonna stick around for a while.
Okay, Commissar Carl, you have more knowledge of this story.
Of what?
You know the story better than I do. You were saying something, so
To a certain extent. Well, I don't know what this worse suffering is gonna be, but maybe let him find out when he finds out.
I can't believe I have been calling you Commissioner Carl for over a year. I just realized this. Wait. Why did no one say anything?
We assumed that it was your unintentional mangling of words.
I just never read more closely. I just thought, oh, Commissioner Carl, okay.
Well, like a cop?
That kind of, yeah, that's legit what I thought your name was.
I kind of visualize you as Carl Winslow.
I don't know.
I
who that is.
legit read that as commissioner. I didn't. I've only now just realized. Oh, that's actually not commissioner. I've just legit never read more closely. I just give it a passing glance. I'm like, yeah, that's commissioner. Because I'm like, what else could it be?
Yeah,
Over a year.
Look at it. Yeah, commissioner. Yeah, because like, why would it be commissar? I mean, who would ever want to call themselves a communist? That's my question.
Why did no one say shit? Like, Tarek,
You wanna
he
tell-
gives me shit for shit. Why
Like,
the fuck did he say
Like
nothing?
if you were to call them Oberguven, Overguven, or whatever the Nazis called themselves, like that would be on par, right?
Ubermensch.
No, Oberguven. Like they didn't call themselves Ubermensch like as a title.
Like as a rank, Ober whatever Führer.
Oberguvenführer.
Yeah. I don't know. Wrong end of the horseshoe effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay.
Officer Carl was the dad in Family Matters. You know Family Matters,
Really?
like the black
I
comedy.
did not see that one. No.
No, well, it was. How old are you?
Me?
Yeah.
32.
Oh, you should be familiar with it at least. We're the same age.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot of stuff I should be familiar with, and
Yeah,
a lot of
no,
stuff
I'm
that I am
disappointed.
familiar with that I shouldn't be.
Oberkommandant. I'm disappointed in you. Thank you, Count Valerian of House Tatters. Oberkommandant.
All right.
Anyway, back to your
any
story.
any other thoughts before we kind of wrap up?
What's the what do you? So this is the end of the draft of this one.
Yep.
All right.
That's
So
the
you're
end.
how far are you through the editing process then?
I'm gonna start it up once I finish. I'm gonna start it up pretty soon. I've been working on trying to get the book finished, at least like this read through. Try to do that. I haven't quite finished. I'm kind of how do I put this? I'm just working on trying to get it to the point where I'm comfortable enough to send it into a publisher. I am going. The plan currently is to send it into what is it? The Shadow Mountain Publishing, because they have a pretty good. They've got a system where from the 1st of December to the 7th, they allow slush pile openings where you can just send in stuff.
Not with me.
So that would be the hope.
All right.
So you want to get it finished up by the end of November, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
So they only take submissions in December 1st to 7th, you said?
They take submissions that are unsolicited during that time.
Other than that,
Oh.
you'd have to have like an agent
Oh,
or some other foot in the door.
yeah. Probably not easy to get an agent. I think I tried before. Didn't
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
So
Yuri, you want to plug your channel?
yeah. I got your Yuri. I've got a fair number of. Well, I recorded my Hanumanayana, and then also the God's Light Gospel. A couple other things on there, and I wasn't really getting any attention, and I kind of hit like the depressed end of the manic cycle, and I haven't really done anything since. So like it's been a few weeks, but if I get some action on there, that'll motivate me to probably do my Monkey King story. That's I got, if you enjoy listening to people read stuff, you actually get to see my face. I don't know if that's a hindrance or a blessing as far as you're concerned. But I think I'm handsome, and that's my channel. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to plug it, Commander Dunn.
Of
Or
course.
Captain.
Of course, my pleasure.
Yeah, man.
Sure.
Thanks
Alrighty. Well,
for the opportunity to be on here.
of course. I'm glad to have you. Alrighty. Well, I think we will call it good for today. I think in the sometime in the next couple of weeks we will do a full-blown Rings of Power live stream once I can figure out all the stuff about the copyright. Well, I'm figuring out the copyright stuff with the Rings of Power, which I'm very irritated about.
I feel like the feint would be Dunn's most critical weakness in combat. I think you could just so easily grab his attention away from what you want.
Oh, it very much depends. Very much depends.
It's these screens, man. Like if I didn't have a cell phone, my attention span would be like infinitely better. Just way better. I guess self-control. You know, there's that too.
Is that what you mentioned?
What's to know about?
What?
Okay.
Rings of Power. Yeah, it's bad. Yeah, we have been watching it. We're going to finish this thing. I have commentaries for it. I just need to finish the darn thing.
Which is in how many weeks?
Currently the plan is for since it's concluding this week, and we'll probably watch it Friday.
Oh wait, it's ending this week?
Yes, this Saturday.
Oh, yay! I finally get to stop hearing about that shit then.
Yeah, there was a
Rings of
girl
Power.
at work who was watching it because she was a huge Tolkien fan. She didn't make it past episode 4.
I'm surprised she reached
retreated back
episode
into
4.
House of Dragon and never left.
The horses, Isildur's wife, Sauron are both. Rings of Power, no.
I watched Shad's most recent autopsy of Rings of Power. He is losing his mind.
Yeah, he's freaking pissed. He is freaking pissed.
He sounds defeated at the end. It like cuts to his outro, which is clearly made at a different time, and he just sounds so defeated and depressed while trying to sound calm. It is sad. It's also really funny, but it's also sad. I have never seen him more pissed at anything in my life. He legit keeps referring to it from with Rise of Skywalker and how it's even worse. And I think that is the last. It is.
Yeah, it is.
But it's like when he's that. Rise of Skywalker also pissed him off a lot.
I mean, with good reason. You know, like George Lucas is no Tolkien, though. I mean, there's like it's sacrilegious that they made this Rings of Power, like just blatantly sacrilegious. You know, it's intentionally so. I think, but then I'm a little crazy.
Yeah.
Also, it's mentioned in the comments. I think Shad unconsciously legit divorces the two Lord of the Rings and Rings of Power because when you know how the last episode ended with the smoke going into Galadriel's face to kill her, right? Done. That's what happened last episode. I think that's
that was
last
the episode before.
that
the
episode before.
this.
Yeah, he's like, we know she isn't dead because we see in the trailer that she's alive, and then in the comments someone mentions like how he mentions that and not the fact that she's alive in Lord of the Rings. It is that disconnected in his brain.
All that because there's no continuity. There's only like a few there's a lot of rip-off references, but other than that, it's mostly just garbage that doesn't have any merit.
It's an attack on the astral plane, is what it is, against literature and all that's sacred. It's only
but
one
Trip-
front in the war. I don't know how serious I am.
Trip, what season 2's coming, but at the very least, I can definitely say there are certain things I have to thank to Wheel of Time season 1. There has been some joy to come out of that season indirectly through rewatches and other circumstances. So you never know. Season 2 might end up having some things for me to thank it, despite no matter how shit it is.
Evil always
Brings the power,
destroys
though.
itself. It is its own undoing by its very nature.
All right. Well,
All right, everyone. It was good seeing you. Good talking with you anyway. Thank you so much. Thanks for having
Alrighty.
me. Hopefully I get to do this again sometime.
Tell that
Alrighty.
to them, Axula.
Excellent. Thank you.
No.
All right.
All right. You got it.
All
man.
right. See ya.
All right.
Bye.
See ya. Take it easy.